The city lights twinkled beneath her as if every window and street lamp was paying homage to the journey that had led her here. Maya swirled the wine in her glass, letting its rich, deep red colour catch the last rays of sunlight. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes scanning the horizon, but her mind was miles away, back to where it all truly began. As much as she had fought to get here, the real battle wasn't over when she graduated from Columbia. It was only the beginning. The financial world was an unforgiving arena, and Maya had quickly learned that no one cared about her struggle to get through college. Her backstory, once her badge of pride, was irrelevant to the sharks that swam in the waters of Wall Street. The job market was brutal. Fresh out of college, she had applied to over 50 investment firms, hoping her academic record and internships would set her apart. But reality was harsher than she imagined. It wasn't enough to be smart. It wasn't enough to be determined. She wasn't from the right family, didn't have the right connections, and lacked the polish that came with years of private education and country club dinners. She'd faced rejection before, but this time it cut deeper. For months, she went to interviews where she could feel the skepticism behind the smiles. They saw her potential but questioned her background. They saw the sharpness in her eyes but were hesitant about the rough edges in her story. She was fighting against more than just competition. She was fighting against a system built to favor people who had never had to fight at all. Maya's turning point came at one of those interviews. It was for an entry-level analyst position at a boutique investment firm, one of the few that hadn't turned her down outright. She was sitting in front of the firm's managing partner, an older man with salt and pepper hair and an air of effortless privilege. He skimmed her resume, his brow furrowing slightly. "Impressive grades," he said, his voice flat. "But tell me, Maya, why should we take a chance on you? What makes you different from the other hundreds of applicants we've seen this week?" His tone was casual, dismissive. He didn't expect much from her, but something snapped inside Maya at that moment. She had spent her entire life feeling like she had to prove she was worthy of being in the room, like she had to apologize for where she came from. Not today. Maya leaned forward, locking eyes with the man. "You should take a chance on me because I've already faced more challenges than most of those other applicants will ever know. I've worked harder to be here than anyone you've interviewed this week. I didn't come from money. I didn't have connections handed to me on a silver platter. But I know what it means to fight for something, to push through when everything is stacked against you." Her voice didn't waver, her confidence rising with every word. "You want someone who will work harder than anyone else in your firm? Someone who won't crumble under pressure? Then you need me. Because I'm not just here to have a job, I'm here to build something, and I'll stop at nothing to get it." For a long moment, the man stared at her. She could see the wheels turning in his mind, could feel the weight of the silence between them. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and smiled, something akin to respect flickering in his eyes. "All right, Maya," he said, almost amused. "You've got my attention. We'll give you a shot." That was how it all started. But getting the job was just the first step. The real test came in the months that followed. The financial world was brutal, and Maya's learning curve was steep. She worked grueling hours, often staying in the office long after everyone else had gone home, poring over spreadsheets and data until her eyes burned. There were days when the pressure felt unbearable, when she questioned if she was really cut out for this world. But every time the doubt crept in, she reminded herself of where she came from. She reminded herself that this wasn't just a job. It was her escape, her future, her proof that she could rewrite her story. And slowly, things began to change. Maya's work ethic didn't go unnoticed. She wasn't the fastest, but she was the most thorough. She wasn't the loudest in meetings, but when she spoke, people listened. She carved out a reputation for herself as someone who delivered results, someone who could be trusted with the high-stakes deals that made or broke careers. Her background, once seen as a liability, became her greatest strength. She wasn't just another Ivy League graduate with a cushy upbringing. She was resilient. She was unbreakable. Within 2 years, she had moved up the ranks, taking on larger clients and managing more significant portfolios. The same men who had once dismissed her as an outsider now sought her advice. She was no longer the girl fighting to survive. She was the woman shaping the future of the firm. But success came with its own cost. The higher she climbed, the more isolated she became. The long hours left little room for personal relationships, and the cutthroat nature of the industry made it hard to trust anyone. Her father, though sober, remained distant, their relationship forever scarred by years of neglect. Friends were few and far between. She had sacrificed so much to get to where she was, but sometimes she wondered if the loneliness was worth it. Yet even in those moments of doubt, Maya knew one thing for sure: she was in control of her life. For the first time, no one could tell her she wasn't good enough. No one could make her feel small. She'd earned her place at the table, and she wasn't going to let go of it. The wind picked up, pulling her out of her reverie. Maya glanced down at her phone, the screen lighting up with notifications. Another deal had just closed, one that would bring in millions for her firm. She smiled, a quiet satisfaction settling in her chest. She had done it. But as she sat there, the city stretching out before her, Maya realized something else. The view from the top wasn't just about success, it was about choice. She could keep climbing, keep pushing for more, or she could decide to build something new, something that didn't cost her so much of herself. She was finally at the top of the mountain.